Welcome back to Today in Space, the All Things Space Science podcast. As always, I'm your space science podcast host from the East Coast, Alex G. Orfanos, and we're here for another episode. This week, I'm talking about space internet, building my own AI, and investing in my own skill set. It's a way of easing my mind as we continue to see a lack of leadership at NASA and lots of cuts happening before the program and the cuts are actually official. It's very frustrating. Lots of chaos, and many good public servants who've served NASA for a decade or two are now choosing the option to leave. And there really isn't anyone technically in charge at NASA. We now have an interim administrator, but really just a few people at the top making decisions before anything official has happened. So I've been focusing my energy elsewhere and back to our 3D printing lab, AG3D, where I can feel like I'm useful. And there's a lot to share. So this episode, what I'm going to do is share more about my choice to get space internet, why I'm building my own AI on my computer, and how I've entered another stage in investing in myself and my skill set. So buckle up and let's dive in. Welcome to Today in Space. Space internet. The price has finally reached a point where I can actually partake in space internet with Starlink, actually getting a service from something operating in space, which is pretty cool. I mean, GPS, yes, but it doesn't feel like you bought GPS, right? Where this is internet. So it's interesting. And I was happy that we could finally dive in. And we've been needing better performance with internet, with all the streaming that we've been doing these days. We've been doing the telescope at night, which has been awesome. Our 3D printing lab is very close to start streaming there, and we've been doing a lot more in that area, so we need better internet. Again, I am just a customer, right? I'm not getting paid by SpaceX or Starlink. I am now just purchasing the tech and the service, and since we're a space podcast, we're definitely going to talk about it. It's usually $350 for the dish and the router and all the hardware, and then I believe it's $120 a month for residential internet from Starlink. They're giving people free hardware, so $350 off if you pay for 12 months of the service at $90 per month, which is discounted. Since that's only $30 more than I'm paying now, and the speeds on the low end of what are available for around here, assuming I get good coverage for the skyline, it could be at least 2 times faster than what I'm getting now, and potentially more reliable for streaming. So what to expect from Today in Space? We'll be sharing our experience with the series on social media and our YouTube page. We'll do episodes and updates here on the podcast too. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube page. Make sure you're following us at Today in Space Pod on Instagram and Twitter, and Today in Space on TikTok. We'll share the unboxing, the installation, testing of the actual internet, and why we're choosing internet from space. We'll dive into the business, the product, and the service from space. I can tell you one thing that was a big consideration is that Starlink funds the future development of Starship, which has the best chance right now of bringing progress to human spaceflight to the moon and Mars and carrying NASA's human missions forward. But with all the chaos at NASA, with the funding and cuts, something like Starship becomes very important on my list very quickly. And if I get great internet from that as well, then that's great too. But there's a little bit of my why there that I want to share, and we'll dive into more later. And next, I wanted to share some thoughts on a new stage that I'm entering in. When I first started this podcast, I thought of myself as a pure aerospace engineer. Like, I was like, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm an engineer. No, it was always I'm an aerospace engineer. That's what I told people I was. It's what I identified for a long time. It was what I was going to do, and it made sense. Like, that's what I went to school for and went into student debt to get my degree in. But around that time, 2012, like, the space shuttle had just been retired. The space industry was hurting. We didn't have an option. They had just started to get the commercial crew program up and running. It was not a great time for someone who had joined aerospace engineering as a degree to go work on the space shuttle. And that was just too far out of reach for me as like a second generation Greek American who's like not a rock star student by any means, but was really passionate about the subject. And it was just not something that my family had done before, right? I didn't have people who were engineers close to me that I could have asked questions. It was something that I was passionate about working on the space shuttle, working in space, and helping build the things that were taking people into space. So it was definitely a dark time for me, and also the impetus for me starting this podcast. I was going to be my digital resume. I've talked about this before, but for anyone that's new, this podcast started as a digital resume. It was a way for me to get experience in space, even in an industry where they weren't looking at someone like myself to join the jobs that I was interested in. And it helped me communicate about it, to dive in deeper, to learn more, right? And in that process, I found 3D printing and how it was going to be used in space. And at that time, there were only a few 3D printers out there in the market, and some of those kits and Kickstarters were affordable for a just out of college engineer salary. And so that's what I did. I've told this before, but when I started the podcast, I was working in a machine shop of injection molders, and I was learning M code and G code, and is the language of how these machines move and machine things. And I was working with extremely talented tool makers who made me believe that anyone could learn to operate these machines. And so that was like, what's going to be my machine? And so a 3D printer was the budget-friendly way to manufacture on my own, make my own parts, and maybe even start a business. And that ended up doubling as the experience that I needed for my resume. And I added another skill to my tool belt of making things and solving problems. And so to me, skill building is one of my strengths. It's what I love. It's what I'm good at, and I love doing it. And it's also kind of meditative too, but I'm a quick learner once I've asked enough questions. And the side quest of learning 3D printing because of my space podcast sent me on this trajectory where AG3D, the business we started from it, was funding the podcast with our 3D printed prototyping business and part service. And eventually my experience allowed me to enter the 3D printing industry, where I was able to get the equivalent or better learning experience of 3D printing, working inside the industry, working with all the amazing, talented people, being a part of building 3D printers, testing them, making sure that the customer on the other side of it had a great experience, and proving to somebody the ROI of a part they could make so that they'd buy that system. And the reason I tell you this whole thing is because I'm back at that same place I was back then. My 3D printing and podcasting has brought me to a place where I'm now curious about AI and AI tools. We've done plenty of episodes and content about how leveraging AI tools in my editing and promoting the podcast has saved me hours a week back in my own time, and it only costs me hundreds of dollars a year, where finding an assistant and trying to figure that out was just out of the question and not financially viable. You know, we've talked with a lot of experts in AI, and I've discussed for hours with coworkers about it, and have plenty more friends that are more experienced than I am that I'm able to bounce questions and ideas off of. And now that I've asked enough questions, I'm ready to start building my skill set in AI and really understand what's going on under the hood and how to help work with AI to solve the problems that we're looking to solve in the world. So as for the why that I'm building my own private AI right here, is the same reason that a company might not let you use ChatGPT, but they may let you use their own trained AI or built AI. It comes down to the data, right? And if I'm going to make tools that help my business or me personally, then I don't want it going to a server filled with everyone's data to have in there or to be trained on, right? And this is especially true for companies that have intellectual property, or, you know, if you're working on any kind of government work, throwing that stuff just into ChatGPT or a Gemini, technically that data is now Gemini's. It's now ChatGPT's. So that's a lot of the resistance is coming right now in these companies using AI tools, and they're looking for people to help build their own. And I came to the same conclusion after asking enough questions, because I don't want to be training some big company's AI on my own business information. And more importantly, I want to tailor my own AI partner to me and what I'm working on. The powerful tools like Gemini and ChatGPT and others are great, Grok and all those other different ones. but they're not being built or trained on data that is specifically useful to me and you. And I've been fascinated in the training and tuning of AI, and that's kind of where I'm heading using an open source Python based AI and tool set. And we'll be training it on 3D printing part success, my own knowledge transferred to it, and building tools that will make the experience of 3D printing with AG3D better for customers and users, and the parts that they'll end up making and they'll be able to excel more often and catch issues before you even start printing. So that's a small encapsulation of what we're trying to do and why we're building these tools. And eventually we'll do some open source stuff, but just to start, I wanted to play around and build something custom. So that way I have a better focus and I'm not inundated with every single way that I could help, which could very easily happen with an open source project. And right now, I just don't have the bandwidth. So private it is. And that would be a skill that would add to the resume for any potential future business work or maybe another job. Who knows? But I did it with 3D printing and it's time to do that with AI. And so we enter the AI stage of AG3D, which we'll call AG3D Labs for now. 3D printing, making, software, AI, lots of tech all in one lab. And in building my own private local AI on my computer, I've gotten back into coding, which has been very interesting, especially having AI as like my coding assistant, right? Like I learned coding in college for a project where we were building an app for a paperless lab experience for students in the biology department. So I know enough about coding to make prototype, but really just like any good engineer or scientist, I know enough to ask good questions. And with AI as an assistant, if you ask good enough questions and prompt well, then you're going to get some really interesting stuff. And that's where I'm going to dive in. And so I've been in the middle of building some of those tools for the 3D printing business, and I've got some projects for Today in Space in mind that we will get to. But I'm going to do my best to share that journey with all of you, and I'd love for you to jump in too and share with anybody who's interested, and more importantly, for you to ask questions because we're only as good as the questions we ask. And I will have my own bias, and there'll be areas that you're interested in or that you're questioning that I maybe never even considered. So please ask questions. At Today in Space, we are definitely more on the side of using curiosity to learn something that's new and scary. Artificial intelligence is definitely on the next boogeyman list. So dive in with us. We're going to build an AI and develop tools and work on the problems that we're here to solve. And I'll close out this episode by saying there's honestly a ton that's going on. And we've got another big announcement and project coming out in August of this year. My friend Matt Guy of Niche3D will be starting something new together about 3D printing, and I can't wait to share with you. Matt and I first met working in the 3D printing industry together, and we've stayed in touch, and we've worked together again in a different 3D printing business after that, and plenty of other personal projects. And this time, we're joining forces. It's going to be a lot of fun. So stay tuned and get ready for August. Go to ag3d-printing.com and see what we're up to. Yeah, that's kind of the episode. Is me just sharing that I'm at this kind of nexus point of my next adventure as I wear my Adventurous Astronaut t-shirt, which is amazing. Thank you, V-Friends. But yeah, I'm at this nexus point, and one of those new projects that we're working on with Matt, like I would not have met Matt if I had not been curious enough during the early days of the podcast to dive into 3D printing. I never would have bought that 3D printer. I never would have worked at that first company. And then I never would have been laid off during the pandemic to then work with Matt at another 3D printing company for us to become friends and coworkers and now partners in a venture. So it's not lost on me how special that is. And I have that same feeling now with AI. So I'm very excited. I hope you are too. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Today in Space. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Today in Space Pod, X at Today in Space Pod. Our personal account on X or Twitter is El Greco, ELGR, the number 3, CO. And then we're at Today in Space on YouTube and TikTok. So go check that out. We've got a lot of series coming out on just little things like space internet and plenty of other stuff, including our 3D printed parts. If you haven't already, definitely check out. We've been making like crazy in the 3D printing lab and the part detective. If you have any 3D printing mysteries that you want solved, hit us up, ag3dpartdetective at gmail.com and ag3d-printing.com, so you can book anytime. So hit us up there. And that's it, folks. Have a great week. Spread love, spread science, stay curious, and we'll see you on the next episode of Today in Space.